Sariel, Angel of the Waning Moon. When the war broke out, Sariel was one of the Watchers who stayed clear of the fighting. To risk one's immortality seemed a chance not worth taking. Perched above it all, waiting patiently for the wave of bloodshed to roll back, he wasted away. His presence was rarely seen among men. Weakened and afraid, he waited in his nest until night time to venture out and seek out a means to escape the prison his body had become. And Sariel is also an angel of healing and judgment and punishment. And I've mentioned before, on this channel, that I don't do justice workings. I feel like it's an imposition of my will, or at a minimum, an attempt of that. I'm more of a judgment working kind of gal. I see it as kind of like a spotlight operator, just like a hey, look over here, look at what's going on. And there's a lot to see right now, unless you've been under a rock for the past couple of days. You've seen everything about Renee Nicole Good, the woman who was killed by ICE agents, who was murdered, in my opinion. And there's a lot of discourse going around about that. And so I wanted to address some of that through a reading, through a judgment reading. And I know that's going to influence the way the reading comes out, the direction of it, but it's important to talk about. And really, what this card is getting into is the wasting away while not taking action. So we'll start to get into it. And I think there's a lot to be said about how much healing can come from anger and how important that is in the healing process, because it's not used to skip to the end, to the finding the meaning part. It's to fuel that fire for change. So we'll start to get some cards and we'll get into it. There's a lot going around right now. The videos are really hard to watch. And even if you can't watch the videos at all, or you need to look away from them, skip down to the text or something, don't look away from the topic. I think that's really, really important. And it is an absolute tragedy that an innocent person was taken, their life was taken by ICE. And I'm seeing a lot of, specifically white women in particular, appropriating the say her name tag, which has me pretty angry. That tagline or slogan, whatever phrase you want to use for that, say her name, that is from like 2014. And what was her name? I just looked this up. Kimberly Crenshaw. She came up with that term. She was trying to expand the focus of the Black Lives Matter movement, because at the beginning, at a minimum, it was primarily focusing on men. And so, trying to expand that lens out to women. And now it's become, say their name, say his name, to be more inclusive. But I'm seeing white women appropriate that. And that phrase is not for us. It's something that, like, you can join in the rally cries, how it's being used for the appropriate audience. It is so important that we are using our privilege to speak up without stomping on other communities. And whatever time, whatever stop you get off of the propaganda train, that's the right stop to get off at. And just have some awareness for maybe how long it took to get off of that train. And you don't need to shame yourself for that, because once you're off that train, there's a lot of stuff that comes to the surface. And I think it's important that we are providing spaces for people to learn and not to be chastised. Because what do we really want to accomplish? Do we want to grow the communities and the movements against these atrocities, or do we want infighting? So it's pretty layered, all these things going on. We've got the release. This is the Midnight Oracle. Pretty wicked art. But it came out in reverse, so tension building. And just in that short amount of time, like, there was a lot of stuff coming up for me there. Because I can already, like, feel the defensiveness, the, like, well, I didn't mean to's, and, you know, I didn't know. It's okay to not know. Like, you don't know what you don't know. It's just having acknowledgement for, like, oh man, I screwed up. Like, I'm gonna do better next time. Because, let's be honest, ICE isn't after us. Even the white immigrants, they're not after them. They're after the black and brown communities. And we need to not be stepping on them to, you know, be the whatever social media, doing the virtue signaling. It's just having some awareness for the pain that, the systemic pain that we don't experience because of the color of our skin. Like, yes, our whiteness will never save us from being women, but we're still white. And that means that we'll be coming out of the majority of interactions with law enforcement alive. Renee didn't. And it's terrible. It's terrible that an innocent person lost her life exercising her First Amendment rights. And we should all be outraged at that without appropriating from other communities. So, my little soapbox there. But so what else? What else is building? The air has just felt electric and tense, and I know there's been another incident in Portland too, just today. So it's just like this pressure cooker in everybody. Very heated. So what about the release? A little bit of a clunky start, I know. But there's a lot of energy to cut through. And I don't mean skip over. It's a lot. Maybe you've been struggling with your fight or flight, like me. Maybe having a hard time remembering to do your coping skills. Things like that. These are usually a more talkative deck. Here we go. Queen of Pentacles. Also in reverse. It's a lot of material. Health would be also covered by Pentacles. So that could be that stress starting to build, you know, what I just mentioned about maybe not using coping skills. And sometimes it's really hard to remember that when you're going through extreme stress, because everything we're being subject to, not normal. It is not normal to be staring down the barrel of fascism day in and day out and then having to like maintain the normalcy of a 9 to 5. Not normal. A lot is being asked of us, and we might feel a little bit out of sorts, to say the least. You know, maybe almost like we're losing our grip on our empire, for lack of a better term. But it's just like thing after thing after thing. It's like the kingdom is starting to fall. And back to the story that I had read at the beginning, you know, Sariel retreated to the point where his body was wasting away. Definitely appreciate the urge to retreat right now. And maybe that's what you need. Maybe pulling back a bit. And you got to take breaks. Otherwise, you'll burn out. There's the empathy burnout is real. What else about the release? Because that kind of looks like that really thick vape smoke. So maybe you're resisting the urge to return to old vices, even though they might feel very tempting. That could contribute further to the health aspect of the Pentacles. We've got the Three of Wands, a journey, looking towards a horizon, but this is a wall of fog. It's like we can't see. Can't predict. And I think in this scenario, the reason we can't predict what's happening is because we're looking forward and not looking backwards. Because history is repeating itself at an accelerated pace, though. The boldness and the audacity just off the charts. Blatant, flagrant, just flying in the face of law for civil offenses. Like, immigration is civil court. And some of these hearings that I'm seeing come out of Senate, Congress, so forth. Like, what a joke these people are. The hearing with the defense secretary, what's her bucket? I can't remember her name. Noam. That she was like, oh, we've never deported any veterans. And then the congressman, he was like, well, on the iPad here, we have a veteran that you deported, you know, back to a country they haven't lived in since they were 7. I thought that was perjury. You know, not a lawyer. But it's their responsibility to be prepared for hearings. Like, if they talk out of the side of their mouth, there's supposed to be consequences for that. That only applies to us? I mean, it seems like yes, you know, the if there are fines as an option, like an either or option for a punishment, then the laws only apply to poor people, people who can't afford them, or people who can't afford the right lawyer. The justice system is a joke. I'm so just incredibly disappointed in the things that are happening right in front of our face. And we're just expected to be like, okay, time to go to work and circle back on these emails. Oh. But that's why getting in touch with your anger is important. Because those kind of feelings that I'm expressing right now, those stew. Those like to cook. And then, like, your jacket pocket gets caught on a doorknob and you blow your lid. Like, it happens. There are a lot of healthy ways to engage your anger. Getting physical is a great way. Axe throwing. I know I've brought that up many a time here. Back in the day, I used to do MMA. That was absolutely a good release for anger. What do we have here? Ooh, Seven of Swords in reverse. Deception revealed. Yeah, I mean, we're seeing it right in front of our face. Just... And it's not ICE and DHS and all that are being deceitful. They're doing this in broad daylight. It's just like atrocity after atrocity. The type of things that, you know, the BLM movement, they've been saying this for years. Like, this has been going on for a really long time. It's all coming to the forefront now. Delayed, late, as per the usual. But I think some of the shock of this is that there were other people filming. And like the first thing that not only DHS did, but the president, was to justify murder. Because we have the video, like we can see it. Yes, there needs to be investigations and whatnot, but it's plain as day. Like, her tires were pointed to the right. They were pointed away from the officer. And, like, he's firing into a vehicle that's going away from him. Like, we can see it. And they're still trying to gaslight us when we have receipts. It's just so blatant. This is why it's important to read 1984. Oh. On the left here, just tell me more. I'm just going to try to follow the thread. Because this is fuzzy and foggy, just trying to swim through the cognitive dissonance that we're all being subject to. Oh, and I did a random dice roll again. Leo, Uranus, and third house. So is that Gemini? So two sides. Duality. Very mercurial. What else? Oh, two. We've got Infernal Pact. And the Crimson Prophet. Ooh. Whoa. Infernal. I'm trying to think of like a sentence with that word. Let me get the book. 43. Upright. Temptation, hidden desires, and forbidden knowledge. This card represents the allure of power and the struggle between light and shadow within yourself. Well, and forbidden knowledge is also something of Sariel's. So I think Sariel was who decided to lead the Watchers down to Earth and wanted to give them knowledge of the moon cycles. That was one thing, because he's an angel of time, and there was like a tea, like teaching knowledge of herbs and such too. There's a little bit of a crossover with the characteristics of Azazel, the angel of forbidden knowledge, and the leader of the fallen Watchers. So forbidden knowledge with the Crimson Prophet. I'm kind of getting false prophet vibes from that. I guess that's more the reverse meaning, but upright, divine foresight, clarity, and the merging of wisdom and power. This card represents a higher calling, urging you to align with your inner vision and trust your spiritual guidance. But then we also have the allure of power. So this is giving me like the canned responses that you see generally from the right side of the spectrum, right being like the political spectrum, not correct, about this whole discourse around like just comply, just whatever, follow orders and do what they say and whatnot. Like, okay, we still have not been presented with anything remotely that justifies this use of force. That's this whole like bootlicking. Why? I don't understand. Like, I don't know. I'm trying to put myself in those other shoes. It's really hard. But they've become misguided, thinking that really the way the justice system and law enforcement and whatnot, how it's operating now, is just. And I think a big part of it is because there's like a perception fallacy that because that system works for them, for people that look like me, that it is a just system because they're not being exposed to the other side of the table, to seeing like this systemic oppression, and or something hasn't happened to them personally to like wake them up to, oh, these whatever names they want to call the liberals. But we're not just spewing hot air. Like, they're killing people. It's on video. We have so many videos of this happening. Perception is not reality. But what about the Crimson Prophet and the Infernal Pact? The vibe is heavy. don't feel as lighthearted and chipper as I typically am. I'm just taking the bottom one. That's 9 of Wands in reverse. Lack of boundaries. And that's like the temptation for power has like breached the wall. Because there's a real cognitive distortion that occurs for a really long time, and it really gets ingrained into you. Because I used to believe in the system. I used to believe in that, like, I could rely on law enforcement and things like that. Now I don't. Um, and a lot of it has to do with the lack of accountability that I see. How insulated wrongdoers become. And they can just move a city over and get another job, you know? And law enforcement is one of the highest, if not the highest, demographic committing domestic violence. And not only are they committing it, but they're not helping people who are subject to it. It's just the destruction that is happening at their hands, both directly and indirectly, actively and passively, all under the guise of like oh well, she's crazy, like ha ha ha, and then like everybody agrees with whatever man said that, especially one in authority. That was what we saw happen on the Gabby Petito Netflix documentary. The interaction they had at the Arches National Park. But there's like a ingrained cultural thing that you're supposed to be able to trust law enforcement. Power corrupts. And what is academy training? 6 months long? And then we're putting a firearm in their hands? Putting them behind the wheel of a car on like chases and whatnot, and like the adrenaline's pumping, and that affects judgment. All of that affects judgment. Doesn't matter how long, if you're brand new or whatnot. There's just something like, how do you get people to wake up? Judgment. Actually seeing consequences for incidents like this. That not only to address what occurred, is no matter what consequences there are, she's still going to be gone. All of the lives, the innocent lives that have been lost at the hands of law enforcement, they're still going to be gone. There's nothing that they can do to make that better. Lost my train of thought. But there we go. Judgment. Actually seeing accountability occur in a meaningful way. That is not only what the people personally experiencing these things need to see, and the people who are rising up and saying things about how atrocious all of these actions are, but it can help wake up some people on the other side. They have to come to that conclusion themselves. Working your way through like cognitive programming, conditioning, and whatnot, cultural stuff, really difficult. Um, and people have a tendency to double down when you're like, you're wrong, even when they are. But seeing something meaningful actually happen, some meaningful judgment come down, I don't know if it'll actually bring other people to our side, but that could be the eye-opening event. We've got the Four of Cups and the Five of Cups. Sorry about that. So, apathy and grief. But this one has always thrown me a little bit. Because he kind of looks like he's just lamenting to the sky, to these crows. And inebriated at that. He's also trying to blend in, though, with the mask and, like, the crow feet and everything. Like, lost so much in the grief, unrecognizable to self. And that apathy could be referring to the retreating. Maybe there's a doubling down because people aren't ready to face just the reality of how bad things truly are. And, well, you can't rush people through that initial shock. That can harm that process. But it's got to happen. Candles crackling along, and it does need to happen. Maybe the boundaries that are falling are those perceptions, the cognitive distortions, the cognitive dissonance, that wall of dissociation between what's happening in the real world on the macro scale and playing office politics, and having to try and function as if these things are not occurring. And it's like you're snapping in and out of realities, before you start your shift, doom scrolling, whatnot, and then after you start your shift, catching up on what you missed, during the day. It's tough. I'm just going to keep following the thread. Tell me more about what we need to know. But there could be some real judgment that either you're feeling towards others, towards yourself, that you didn't realize how bad things were up until now, or whenever now is for you, your respective now. And I'm here to say judgment is okay. Judgment is a skill. I think people villainize that word, much like how I've talked about deception. Deception is not exclusively bad, it's how it's employed. But if you didn't exercise judgment, how would you stop yourself from being taken advantage of? like sifting through your emails and discerning which one of those is like a phishing email or something. There's that word again. The infernal warden. Looks like a dragon. But it's in reverse. So more power? Let's see. I guess infernal is the word of the day. So chaos, uncontrolled rage, and self-destruction. It warns against allowing anger or fear to dictate your actions, leading to unintended consequences. I'll read the reflection too. How do you harness your inner power? Are you channeling it constructively, or are you letting it consume you? What lessons lie hidden in your most feral emotions? Ooh. So a lot of themes around power, which I think makes sense given the context. But this could be if this grief gets overemphasized, do you retreat, pull away like Sariel and waste away? Or do you use it as fuel, maybe too much fuel? Because there's a lot of like, what's the right word for this? Divisive advice, I suppose, on like how to handle things, how to feel about things, and I don't know. I suppose it depends on what you're trying to accomplish because who determines what order is? The people with power. And if the people in power are murdering people, is that order? Not in my eyes. I mean, it's distortion. It's a distortion of power. Don't know if it's infernal. I have to look that up. Ace of Swords. Clarity. It's kind of a brutal Ace of Swords. Clarity. Truth. Archangel Michael. Getting that too. Protector, the warrior. And involved in Sariel's story. I think from the scroll of the War of the Sons of Light, Sariel, I think, wrote Michael's name on the third tower in this like apocalyptic event. So signaling to a greater authority. Because if Sariel had been, wasting away, he wouldn't have been battle ready. So speaking your truth. And maybe you haven't done that before. Maybe that's scary. Maybe you feel weird about how long it's taken you to speak up. Comparison is a thief of progress. Because if you are spending your time worrying so much about if you're measuring up to other people, you're not thinking about how you measure up to yourself, to yesterday's actions. Because the only person you need to do better than is yourself yesterday, And take that with a grain of salt. Maybe you need a rest day, and it is okay to take those, especially in times like these. But speaking your truth might be scary. It often is. Um, you can lose people that way. Uh, Sometimes it means your paths have just diverged. Maybe they're not ready to hear what you have to say. And the high priestess flips over as I say that. They want to live in illusion, in secret, just looking at the world through the accepted convention. Because I think there needs to be some appreciation for the grief of waking up to how bad things are. That's really hard. When your core belief system becomes shattered and you realize that you cannot depend on all the things you were told were dependable, it breaks a part of you. And it takes some time to work through that and to recover from that, and sometimes even to identify that, because it's so intangible. Because the belief in the system, as it were, it's not a belief in a person. It's not like I can't point to somebody as an individual. Like there's, representatives of the system and whatnot. But I can't point to one singular individual and say this is your fault. This is a lot of people's fault. Because they get to hide behind this nebulous, behind the agency name or behind the organization name, like whatever system we're talking about. And it removes the person from the accountability. Like organizations can't be held accountable. Just in the same way that AI can't be held accountable. Like this whole Grok thing, that they've been removing like women and children's clothes with AI and whatnot, or whatever, generating reasonable facsimiles of what they would look like. And then there was a statement that came out, and it was like Grok apologizing and whatnot. That was a response to a prompt that a person put in. The AI is not taking accountability. And these are men doing this, that are putting in these prompts to remove clothes from innocent people with the agency to say no had they been given the option. These are people doing this, not AI. AI is a tool. It's not real. Like, it's real, but it doesn't have a personality. It doesn't have any feelings. This phantom veil that we let wrongdoers hide behind has to come down. And it's scary. Because not only are we going to be facing the stuff that we know about, it's going to be all the stuff we don't know about too. And that doesn't mean it doesn't need to be done. It has to be done if we want anything to change. Do it scared. 5 of Swords and 5 of Wands. Oof. Rough. So conflict and then a relief of conflict. Well, two cessations of conflict, actually, with the Five of Wands. It's like the heat gets turned up before the gas runs out. Like, I think what was it? 3.5% is all it takes of a respective populace to where, like, if they rise up and say, we demand change, that system must respond to that request for change or collapse. And 3.5% in America, that's not a small amount of people. Um, but what do we do if we want to see change? And what could occur if we don't do things to foster change? Spoiler alert, World War III. Not to be a fearmonger or anything, but this Three of Wands, the wall of fog, what I was saying about we can't see because we're looking forward and not looking backwards. We've been here before with fascism. We just weren't the bad guys last time. At least not to this scale. And that's another aspect of this grief I think that I've been dealing with. Just the reckoning. It was really after Venezuela and just like all the parallels between that and the Iraq War and things like that. And really having to face the fact that, like, god damn, we are the bad guys. Like, what we're doing right now is not honorable. It's not making anybody safer. It's doing quite the opposite, actually. Um, and sometimes all the criticism that the other side has to lob is that there are mayors dropping the F-bomb. Like that's what has you all twisted up? Not that innocent people are being murdered and that we have video of it. I don't know. Oh. The Sentinel. That just like popped out right in my hand. So a Guardian. Like, this is kind of how I used to feel about America. That we were like this sentinel of freedom, justice, things like that. We're like the obstacle. Because the First Amendment is one of the things we really got right. And we're watching it fall to pieces. There's so much grief that comes with it. Like, I couldn't imagine being a veteran, especially an injured veteran. Like, this is what they fought for? No. But this is what we got. So So what are we going to do about it? Because we can't go back and undo this stain on our name. All we can do is act better going forward. It's like the Empress. And in reverse. It's not a fun energy. Distorted feminine ruler. And that's just the vibe, not necessarily the actual gender, but the Empress, both the Empress and the Emperor, they're made up of the 4 queens or kings in the suits. And so this is a leader that acts distorted, either individually in those aspects of those queens or all together. Like rather than oscillating between, it's like all at the same time. It's really I don't even know what word is sufficient for that vibe. Because it's like being hell-bent on well, this is the way, like, we're supposed to support law enforcement and whatnot, and I'm going to do that on principle rather than do it based on the evidence right in front of my face. And, like, really, what do you mean by supporting law enforcement? Like, how does supporting them committing crimes support them? It doesn't. Accountability does, because it makes everybody better. Knight of Swords. And in motion, so it could go either way. But the reckless hero. Is that somebody debating, like standing up to the ruler? I think that owl on the TV thinks so. And there is an owl too, and the card here for Sariel. But this feels like somebody maybe that is on the fence about continuing their support of the Empress. Maybe they're still working through the conditioning of their mind, you know, the sword energy. Getting to the point where they might be willing to face the actions of the Empress, like just in the cold, hard light of day. That things really are as bad as they seem. Because those cognitive processes that, like, I deal with PTSD, dissociation, and like the chunks of memory that end up missing and whatnot, these are all protective measures of your brain, like to keep you safe. It's just so pure to me. Like, even though it gets presented as a disorder, and don't get me wrong, when it gets out of control, it really is a horrific experience. But it's just such a pure, like almost childlike energy to me that your brain would see what you're going through and just be like, nope, we don't need that. That's delete that from the hard drive. That's going to be unnecessary for future, just future. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to this reading. I don't know if this is even congruent. This might just be for me. Maybe this is a reading for me. You know, I mentioned judgment is a skill and whatnot. And also knowing when to not judge ourselves. And we've got the Six of Wands. Victory, yeah. Not judging yourself will lead to victory. That doesn't mean, you know, dismissing and excusing bad behavior in yourself or others. It just means not laying into yourself for reasonable mistakes. Let's be clear. Because some things will be presented as reasonable when they absolutely are not. I suspect there are some, I'd say, even less standards when it comes to those agents than it does like your cookie cutter LEO, you know, city cop, whatever. Do they even have an academy for ICE agents to where they're having to qualify, like marksmanship qualify? Doubt it. You know, I've got my own personal feelings on law enforcement, but if they're going to be a component of the system, train them. Like, train them to handle weapons and such appropriately. And that's knowing when not to use them. It just seems like what's been unleashed on primarily blue cities, like, I don't recall this happening in any red cities on that side of the spectrum. These just seem like hateful people. And they've been emboldened and enabled not just to hate anymore, but to be judge, jury, and executioner for civil offenses. It's wrong. And it's the scale of justice to make this right. Like, strongly worded tweets from our elected officials aren't enough. Yes, they're getting more bold at podiums and such. But we need to see things that protect our citizens. And the first step towards that is actually seeing accountability occur. Because accountability is the only thing that works. It's not like the scolding and the whatnot. They don't care. They don't care what we think of them. There's this hateful agenda. There's so much hate for people who look different than them. It's out of control. And antagonistic personalities don't respond to suggestions, to feedback. Accountability is the only thing that's going to work. And it's up to, like, our elected officials need to step up and show us why you're in your position. Like, why are you there? If not to protect the citizens, your constituents, what are you doing? Like, it's to go on past this point without introducing legislature, means of recourse for, like, I've been wronged by this agency and whatnot. This is how I pursue recourse against them. And limiting the powers of these agencies that are just terrorizing people. I don't know. There needs to be stronger, harsher action. People are dying every day, being sent to countries they've never been to or haven't been to since they were a kid. More wars. Where we can see everything that's happening. Venezuela doesn't produce fentanyl. It was just an excuse. And like all this, I have not verified this, but the, like, trades, the stock trades that were purchased before all this went down, like related to oil stuff, like, the corruption is rampant. And I think it is totally reasonable right now to feel lost, confused, and hurt. And I think what we need to see right in front of our eyes is judgment for wrongdoing. And not judgment that leads to getting a job in another city of the same ilk. I don't really have anything else in me for this, so be safe, be well, and take care of yourself. Tomorrow's another day. Rest, recover, recuperate, keep fighting the good fight. We'll see you next time.